the big drivers for what's going on in the industry actually are things outside the industry, because the industry itself is still relatively small. So I would list two events. One is the recognition by the International Energy Agency. This is a very conservative energy oriented toward the oil industry, that yes, we have reached peak oil, that the production of peak conventional low-cost oil has been reached and is probably behind us. That really changes the dynamic. We must have alternative energy. We don't have an option about how many years we have to roll. We must have bio-based biofuels and other renewables. We've got to have them. The other issue I would say is the wildfires in Russia and the flooding in Pakistan, these extreme climate events that we believe, and the most qualified people believe, are tied to global climate change. We have to get a handle on global climate change, and bio-based products, biofuels, the bio-based economy are one of the very few options that we have providing for ourselves in that way. So I'd say those two things. The fundamental, again, we've passed easy, cheap oil, and we have very great climate concerns. We absolutely must have liquid fuels, okay? Jet transport, heavy marine use and so forth mean you have to have high energy density liquid fuels. The only sustainable way to have high energy density liquid fuels is through biotechnology, bio-based fuels, and then the bio-based chemicals or bioproducts that come with them. There is no other way. In the longer term, I think that if we're going to become a truly large-scale industry, like the petroleum industry is, we must have very large-scale commodity feedstocks, raw materials that we can deliver. The oil industry has, of course, petroleum and natural gas. Even the food industry has grains and so forth. But we want to avoid competition with the food industry, which means that the feedstocks, the so-called cellulosic materials, grasses and straws and wood chips that don't compete with food production, have to be delivered at very, very large scales, huge scales, much larger than we deliver them now. And that's an area in the longer term, I'm talking in a decade or so, that we have to roll out. In the shorter term, the key issue, I think, is for us to be able to make valid comparisons between bioproducts and petroleum-derived products. Life cycle analysis should allow us to do that, but unfortunately, some life cycle analysis is being misused. And what we're having is unfair comparisons between biofuels and petroleum fuels. For instance, the indirect land use change issue is one of those. Indirect land use change idea is that if you use some food or corn or grain or to produce fuels, that's no longer available to provide animal feeds. It's mostly animal feed. Therefore, prices will rise, world agricultural prices will rise to supply that. And somebody somewhere, perhaps in the Amazon or the Malaysian rainforest, will chop down some of that rainforest to produce the additional crop that you've left out. And the idea is that the biofuels ought to be responsible not only for their own carbon footprint, but for the carbon footprint of that fellow in the Amazon with the chainsaw who's cutting down the rainforest to replace the fuels. If you do that, if that's the boundaries of the study, then we must include indirect effects also for petroleum, which is people are not doing. For example, the wildfires and a methane release from permafrost and from tundra, huge indirect effect directly tied to use of petroleum and other fossil fuels. But that's not being accounted for. So I'm going to make the case that it should be. I think the biggest thing we can do is help the public actually make proper comparisons, because I believe that biofuels, bio-based products are superior to their petroleum competitors. But until you do a proper comparison, and life cycle analysis is one way to do that, unless you have a comparison on a proper basis, you never help the public make those kinds of choices. I don't think my own country, the United States, is ambitious enough. I don't think we've really gotten serious, truly serious yet, about the great threat that our dependence on petroleum is to economic security, to national security, to climate security. And maybe the European view is that we're further ahead in that, but I think we're still not serious enough there. Having said that, we're way ahead of where we were a decade ago. And we have some momentum, just need to keep pushing it and building the momentum.
Is biotechnology the answer to the climate troubles?
No, there is no the answer. It is part of the answer, though. It can contribute.
Anything else you want to say?
That we need to keep the faith and keep pushing forward. This industry really is happening. It really is rolling out. It really is growing. And we have to keep pushing it forward, helping overcome the perceptions. And I think mostly now also focus on proper comparisons between petroleum products and bioproducts and developing these supply chains for very large-scale commodity bioproducts and biofuels.